Hi guys, welcome back to the Library of Alexandria. And today have I got a treat for you. This is going to be my review of the much anticipated The Way of Edan, boosh, by Dr. Philip Chase. This is the first book in the Edan Trilogy. And just to go ahead and begin, I have all of the qualifiers and all of the caveats. This was a difficult book for me to review, not in the fact that it is, like, it's bad and I don't want to, hurt Philip's feelings. That is not the case at all. But in the fact that Philip is a really good friend of mine. He is one of my early friends on BookTube and one of my really good friends on BookTube. And couple that with the fact that I will be the one performing the audiobook narration for this book, that just creates a whole slew of conflicts of interest when reading and reviewing this book. So much to the point where I almost felt like I couldn't even review it, because if you've watched my channel for any length of time, I always try to be honest about the things that I'm reading, and I don't want to, I read books that my friends have written before, and I always, put up like, hey, so-and-so's a good friend of mine, but I've never been financially tied to a book before, so that just made it a kind of a weird thing, extra layer when reviewing it. And couple that with the fact that I've been trying to tweak my star system anyway, because I use stars all the time, but I've been trying to kind of eliminate the half star just to have a more uniform thing, even though all stars aren't created equal. I just tried to be not hypercritical, but I tried to be aware as I'm reading it, with am I giving something a buy because it's Philip? Would this normally bother me? That kind of thing. Or am I just oh man, this is just great because because it's Philip. Because I don't like when people give authors a buy just when they don't know him. So anyway, without wasting any more time, let's get down to business. Let me get into my Way of Edan review. Now, I said all that, you might think I think it's terrible. I do not. This is an excellent book, and you should buy it. I'll go ahead and get that out right away. The Way of Edan is the first book in a trilogy that he's already written that is going to be released, because self-published authors, y'all gotta stop. Y'all gotta, one a year. We accept one a year. This whole, I'm gonna release, all of my whole series in a year. Philip and Chiago with y'all's, 3-4 books a year. Y'all gotta stop. I can't read books that fast. One a year. Anyway, book 2 is coming out in June, and book 3 is coming out in September. Right away, it is clear, and Philip has said this in his many interviews and his many conversations, Philip's inspiration, the inspiration from Lord of the Rings and Tolkien, is right here. It is on display. It is front and center. It is not hidden. So be aware of that going in. If you like Lord of the Rings, I promise you're going to love this book, because Philip wears his inspiration there on his sleeve. It is very obvious of his love of kind of the atmosphere and time period, and the love of the culture, and just all of Philip's expertise that from his studies and his love of medievalism and Old English and Norse. All of the love of his cultures and all of that is really, really on display right here. It is rare that I have read a book where it is so obvious of someone's love of the subject matter. I imagine it would be if I wrote a book on the Peloponnesian War, or a Roman historical fiction, something like that, because I love those time periods so much. I can imagine that would be just incredibly on display and incredibly obvious, just dripping with my fondness for those periods. That is here in spades. And I definitely want to say that, and this is a compliment, Philip's prose is really good. It is evocative of Tolkien, and that's so weird to compare it to, hey, so I'm comparing Philip to, the main dude of the genre. But that's what it feels like. Now, I haven't read Lord of the Rings in a long time, but I have read snippets of it, and that's the best I can compare it to, is it feels very Tolkien-esque, for good or ill, if that's your thing or if it's not. But it's in a way that also feels fresh, like kind of a fresh spin on kind of the classic way of writing. I never felt bogged down by Philip's prose at all. I never got just, you know, wading down through the bog of purple prose. None of that. But it does have that classic evocative feel where Philip's sense of like location is excellent. One of the things he excels at in here is giving us that sense of place, whether it's one of the forests or a small town inn or the crossroads or a large city teeming with life. Philip's world feels lived in, rich with its own history, its own cultures, a lot of different people who are similar but different. There's a lot of hatred between different groups for various reasons, real or imagined. And that is one of the strengths of this book, is the fact that Philip has obviously spent a lot of time in this world, with this world, giving each specific culture and people and location its own history, even the places that that are just mentioned and that we haven't seen. This world really does feel lived in, and that is one of the best parts of this book. And it was cool talking with him about the audiobook, about how talking to me about how some of the people will pronounce this word differently than these other people. Like, I mean, dialects like we have now, but the fact that he's thought about the dialects of the people within the world is just really, really cool. Also on display is his love of culture and lore and myth and ritual. He often stops the camera and turns us on to some kind of ritual or cultural event or something that evokes some myth from the past. Like there's a dwarven funeral ritual that we just watch in depth, and that is almost immediately followed in the next chapter by a birth ritual, like kind of like a baptism or a christening type thing. And those are obviously not put together so closely on accident. It's obviously on purpose. But this focus on these cultural rituals and then going deep in, there's like a 2.5 page epic poem done in the Old English style, which Philip, we talked about, is actually done in the Old English style with this alliteration and hitting on these words that all start with the same letter. He has spent so much time building realistic people and cultures within this book. It is really, really a marvel to see. Now, it does have that classic feel. It's got that small town, the small village, the young boy who, things happen, and then we go on a quest accompanied by his friend, who is the bondsman. So we've got Dayraven is our main character. He is a really freaking cool name. He's going on a quest to find somebody, accompanied by his bondsman Imhar, who is really cool. He is from the South, but was sold into slavery and is the bondsman of Dayraven's father, and Dayraven's father sends Imhar with him. Other characters we have are the sorceress Sequara, who is freaking awesome and shoots lightning from her fingertips because it's awesome. And then we've got also the priests. And while the priests are our antagonists, they are some of my favorite perspectives. Bledla, the supreme priest, who sees himself as the second coming, or as the second coming of the main prophet of Edan, as Edan is going to be reborn in a prophet someday, and that is. And Bledla thinks that it is he. He's read the prophecies, and that he's the one that's going to be that. We've got Yoraman, who is my favorite character, who is a high priest, but not a supreme priest, who is more of a scientifically minded priest who is, has his own things going on behind the scenes. We've got Aaron, or Aran, who is an older priest who may or may not think what they're doing is the right thing. I love how Philip has this domineering faith, this overbearing, kind of aggressive faith, but within that there are these factions of the true believers, of those who pretend to be the true believers, of those who are true believers, but believe that this section of true believers is way too aggressive, and that maybe conflict and war is not the answer, and that maybe we should be compassionate and try to spread the faith through, acts of good instead of acts of war. So it really is kind of a nuanced portrayal of faith and belief, and what people believe in and what they think is worth fighting for. One of my favorite things in the book is there is a very, very nuanced choice that is made to where, having read a bunch of, if you've read a bunch of fantasy books, especially fantasy books where the church is often the bad guy, I mean, that's just the thing. You know where a certain kind of like plot thread is going, and then it doesn't go where you think it's going to go, and instead chooses a much more nuanced avenue. And when I got to that point, I messaged Philip and I was like, I love this. I love that you did this instead of the standard thing that we think is going to happen here. It just kind of like from there blossomed out into a number of possibilities, because if he chose to do this here, then, well, where can it go? We really are going to get a bunch of people's real struggles with the faith, as opposed to, you know, a kind of like monolithic, well, let's just burn the world down kind of thing. It's really, really good. And this book went in a lot of different places that I didn't expect it to do, because, as I said, it is very, very classic. There's, you know, the farm boy and his bondsman going from place to place, and there are so many inns in this book. Like, why are they going to so many inns? And then, you know, they're chased and have to run, and that is very, very, you know, that is very, very familiar. The kind of political war council sort of felt to me like the council at Rivendell. Like, what are we going to do to stop the bad guys? It is very, very familiar in a lot of ways. But what Philip does is he takes these kind of familiar tropes, these familiar situations, and he does different things. Even if it's not wildly different, it is a slight variation that keeps it fresh and keeps it from just being like, oh, I guess I'm just reading freaking, you know, a Tolkien wannabe or Eye of the World or whatever. It doesn't feel like that at all. Now, this world doesn't just have humans. It does have different races. We have elves, and the elves are like terrifying. Anybody who has an encounter with an elf dies. No one sees them again. So they're frightening. He has dwarves, but they're dwergs. And the dwergs, I mean, they're freaking dwarves. They use axes. And it's, man, it has been a long time since I read a fantasy book with a freaking dwarf, other than Dragonwing, which I just read. So ignore that. But prior to that, what happened to dwarves? Like, why did we, or dwergs? The dwarves are freaking cool, and they all have names that start with H. So, Hwak, or Hrong, or things like that. The dwarves are fun. And also Vikings, Theoths, the Theoths. They're Vikings. They're Vikings. I asked Philip. They're freaking Vikings. But the dwarves hate the Theoths. And he's also got monsters, from these little gremlin, like, Nightganger puka things to freaking mucous trolls. So they're gross. The freaking mucous trolls. They're called Aglax, but they're mucous trolls is what they are. And so at the center of this book, amidst the traveling of Dayraven and Imhar and Sequara, is from the prologue, the main kingdom of Torland is trying to have excuses to invade its neighbors and spread the way of Edan. And the king of Torland, Eärconwald, is like, he is such a huge tool that he should have, like, a sponsorship by Craftsman. But I love him anyway. And Philip does a really good job making me like this completely douchey character. Eärconwald he's the worst. Like, he's the freaking worst. But he's like the worst in such a, like, ooh, yeah, okay, go ahead and kill that guy. Don't care. I don't know. Like, he's really likable in his douchebaggery. And so Sequara is trying to keep her homeland from being invaded. She's trying to set up to where they can defend against them. But you have all these kingdoms surrounding them that are fractious. They hate this guy, hates this guy, so they're not going to help because, of course, they can defend against the onslaught of Torland. Okay. And so there is a war a-brewing. Meanwhile, Dayraven and Imhar are going from place to place trying to find the person that's going to kind of cultivate his abilities. And when it comes to combat and war, this is where I think it differs from Tolkien's writing style, and instead ventures into the more John Gwynne area, because his like hand-to-hand battles, his like 1v1s or 2v2s, the little small battles, are really freaking brutal. You got people's like throats being ripped out, guts on the ground. It is certainly more graphic and intense than you would find in Tolkien's work. And then the large-scale battles, the huge battles between armies and conflict, definitely feels much more akin to a Gwyn, where you're on the ground seeing it from that kind of like GoPro multi-POV where people, you know, see from here, see from here, see from here, but like just swaths of people are being cut down by blade and by fang. And it is very, very intense and very well written. It's fast moving, it is exciting. And so I think Philip also does, while we have that very classic feel in his writing, when it comes to battles, he just like, it's like he takes the gloves off and it's like, watch all the people die. It's really good, though it seems very different. Like his inner Jekyll writes the narrative, but then when it comes to battle, he, you know, waits till nighttime and Mr. Hyde writes it. It's really good. It's never distracting, and I think Philip acquits himself really, really well here in the battle scenes. I do want to talk about the magic system. The magic system is very, very much not a hard magic system, and I like that. And it's all very tied into that lore and that myth. It's all about songs and songs of origins. Again, you get Philip's love of the epic tradition on display, to where, you know, the Iliad and the Odyssey and, you know, Beowulf, these are all like all these things were sung, not the way we would, you know, consider sung. It's not like they form a boy band and perform in concert like Edan is the only way. That's not what it is, but it is like spoken in front of an audience in rhythm. I love the magic system because the spells, when they are being used, and you know, Philip and I talked about it a little bit when I finished the book, in that it is empathic magic. In order to influence the target of your magic, your mind kind of melds with them, and so you get the, like, let's say someone is using a spell on like a monster. Well, you get what the monster is feeling, like the monster being like what the crap, like why are these people like freaking attacking me? Like, I just want to go back home to my, you know, wife and baby monsters. And I thought that was really, really cool because, as we know, war is such a dehumanizing thing. In order to officially, like, and to effectively command, you have to reduce the other side to inhumans, to numbers, to statistics, because it's really hard for us as people to murder swaths of sentient beings. And so, and that is no surprising from Philip, who is one of, you know, the most compassionate and empathetic people on BookTube. I really liked that use of the magic system, and how these songs of origin, they go back to when these things were created. Anything you want to influence, you have to go back to, like, to its creation, to its origin, and you have to sing the special song depending on what you're influencing, and then you're able to wield that or modify that or manipulate that specific thing. And it's just really, really cool. And there is a lot of, like, Philip does drop a lot of hints and foreshadowing in near the beginning, if you're someone who's really good at picking up on those, so that, you know, you're surprised later. I'm never good at those, so I'm always surprised, which is super fun. The opening chapters of this book are really, really good. Like, they are gripping, even though they are classic, and it just goes, and was like along for the ride. There is a relationship between Dayraven and his I guess hometown sweetie that doesn't feel, you're not like, move it along, ladies and gentlemen. I actually could have read another couple pages of them laying in the meadow and talking. It was really well done and really sweet and really authentic, without being like, oh, like we normally see those things. And there's also a specific chapter earlier on that I just felt kind of like leapt off the page because it felt so different from everything else that kind of was going on, and had me be like, oh, okay, well, what's this plot line going to be? I really, really, really liked it. Philip has done something exceptional here. Let me go ahead and get out my criticisms so that you don't think that I'm just a Philip stan who is doing his audiobook, and so I'm not giving you an authentic portrayal of what this book is like. For me, parts of the middle were a little slow. Again, for me, and it's really just with the Dayraven plotline. Anytime we're dealing with a priest or Sequara, like, I am on board. But Dayraven, I never really connected with Dayraven. In fact, he's actually my least favorite character in this first book. I love Imhar. I like Sequara because, again, lightning bolts. I love Bledla. Yoramun is my favorite character, slightly tied with Erkenwald. But Dayraven, for me, was a little too flighty. He is, and again, I don't tend to connect with young protagonists. That's something that, you know, I've been pretty consistent across my channel, because I deal with teenagers like all day, and their inconsistency is just frustrating. And we do have a real teenager in Dayraven. He is easily influenced, easily manipulated, easily like distracted. And so Dayraven is kind of a little like, he's a little bit like that feather in Forrest Gump that is just kind of like, kind of blowing around. And so I never really connected with Dayraven. And so the middle sections in his chapters, I just struggled a little bit with. There is a major kind of shift in the narrative that for me felt really jarring and really convenient, to where I was just kind of, I was struggling a little bit with like the impetus and the motivation for this kind of shift, and that kind of colored the chapters that came afterwards. I have talked with Joanna, who has is past that part, and it did not bother her. So do not worry. Like, that kind of stuff it could just be a me specific thing. In addition, y'all know, like, I don't care about dwarven funeral rites. Like, that's not my thing. But again, this is all specific to me. There are so many people who are, like, so many of you watching this right now are going to love Philip's attention. And I do love, in the abstract, Philip's attention to detail. I love what he is doing here, even while it not being my favorite thing to read about. So that's really my only criticisms, is I felt like it dragged a little bit in the middle when it came to Dayraven, but that's really it. The rest of it I really enjoyed. I think what Philip has done here, I am so grateful to be able to have the opportunity to narrate this. I'm so excited to do it. I'm grateful for the opportunity to read it early. I'm grateful that Philip trusts me enough with his, you know, his brainchild to be able to do this. I absolutely recommend that you guys should buy this. Like, you should go ahead and pre-order it and buy it. I have talked to them a little bit about where this book ends up. I am so excited for book 2, guys. I think book 2 is going to, I mean, I don't think there's going to be some of the issues that I had with this book, I don't think are going to be present in book 2. So that is why I am very excited for the second book. But please remember, take this with a grain of salt. I'm trying to give you my thoughts and what to expect with this book, so that you can accurately make a prediction on whether or not you are going to enjoy it. But please understand that Philip is my friend, and that I am doing the audio narration. I just want full, complete transparency here. The writing in this book is great. There's not, like, I didn't know that there's no spelling errors, there's no grammar errors. Like, at no point did this feel like it was not edited, that it was rushed to market. Obviously 18 years. All self-pub does not do this, and there are errors in tradpub, so please don't come at me, guys. But we all know that there are some times that self-published books are rushed to market, or not edited well, to where there's a bunch of grammatical mistakes or spelling mistakes that really just don't belong in published works. None of that is here. None of that is here. If you did not know it was self-pub, there's nothing about it that would tell you that it is. On the Kingfin approval system, I give The Way of Edan, boosh, an excellent plus. I don't know why I'm doing this. I never point at the Kingfin approval system. Anyway, I give it an excellent plus out of 5 stars. I think that this book, because I'm getting rid of my half stars. So I think this book was a 4-star read for me. I am fairly confident that book 2 is going to be a 5-star read for me. I'm going to give it 5 stars just because it is Philip's book, and you know, I want to help Philip out and give it. But I mean, it's a 4-star read for me, so you can take either one. You can take the 4-star, you can take the 5-star. Whatever you want. Whatever will make you feel better, you can take whichever one of those that you need. But this is an excellent book, guys. It's an excellent book. Just because it's 4 stars does not mean that I did not like it. It just means that there's a couple parts for me that held it back a little bit. Philip's not going to have any problem getting 5 stars, I promise you. You guys are going to love this book. I hope to have a conversation with Philip and Joanna and Jimmy, where we all talk to Philip spoilers about the book. Be on the lookout for the audiobook that will be hopefully available by the end of the summer. Guys, that is it for me for today. Are you now more excited to read Philip's book? Have you pre-ordered it? Are you going to read the book and listen to the audio? You definitely do not have to. But anyway, guys, I hope that this told you a little bit more about what to expect from Philip's book. That is it for me for today, guys. As always, information about my Patreon and Discord is down in the description, and I'll see you next time, guys.